Hi, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org and I'm streaming live from my kitchen. I'm sorry it took me so long to get started, but I was trying to connect this video to the 28-day anti-reflux plant-based challenge. So thank you for those of you that are watching and you waited for me. So in tonight's video, it's 5 p.m. right here where I'm at, and I'm going to be making it a habit this month for this challenge to come into the kitchen and cook different recipes from the recipe files, different recipes that have been adapted to eliminate common trigger foods for reflux. This is also a plant-based challenge. So tonight I'm going to be making the potato hash, which is actually a breakfast recipe. And last time I was in the kitchen, I made a potato recipe. There are quite a few potato recipes in the files. You may have noticed that. Potatoes are a very nutritious food, and they're, I believe, a great food for people who suffer with reflux, although I'm sure there's somebody out there who cannot tolerate potatoes. But generally speaking, they're a great food for people with reflux because they're full of nutrition. They're commonly not a reflux or an agitator for reflux. And hey, Angela. And they're very versatile, so you can do so many different things with potatoes. And so tonight, this potato hash is actually something that I will make if I have a lot of kind of leftover vegetables, if I have a few potatoes I need to get rid of because they're starting to chit out, you know, starting to root out. If I'm going to a potluck, potatoes are great because they're cheap and you can make a lot of food for a potluck. And they're great for breakfast if you're not feeling like something sweet like a smoothie or oatmeal and you want something more savory. I like to do this potato hash recipe, and like I said last time, what I'll oftentimes do is cook a lot of potatoes in my Instant Pot at the beginning of the week and then keep them in my refrigerator, and I can cut them up and use them for a recipe like this. And it's pretty quick. It's a really quick and easy breakfast if your potatoes are already cooked, so you just need to chop them up. And I'm going to be using the Foreman grill for this. That's how I cook my potato hash. So I just throw everything in the Foreman grill. And then we're going to talk about today's topic while these cook, which is why plant-based eating? Why plant-based nutrition for reflux? Why is it beneficial? What are the why does it work? Why is it good for people with reflux? All right, so let's get started. So I already have my potatoes here. In tonight's recipe, I'm not actually going to be following the recipe specifically. Like I said, I usually just use what I have on hand. So I happen to have just a little bit of broccoli, and then I have a few mushrooms, and then I have, my local supermarket had organic bell peppers on sale a few weeks ago, so I bought a bunch of them, chopped them up, put them in a Ziploc bag, and I've been keeping those in my freezer, which is great for something like this or for a soup. I just grab a handful of these and they're good to go. So let's get started by just chopping up these potatoes into bite-sized pieces. I have 5 Yukon potatoes here, but you could use any kind of potato that you like. You could use red potatoes, purple potatoes, or russet potatoes. It really doesn't matter. I use all kinds of potatoes. I used to only cook with these Yukon Golds because they're very creamy and I love the texture and the flavor of them. Can you guys see my cutting board? So much glare on my screen, I can hardly see myself. That's why if I miss your comments, that's why I have a hard time seeing the screen with the glare. But yeah, you can use any potatoes you want. These are Yukon Golds, and I have 5 medium. And this probably will not all fit on the grill. But I like to make big batches because what I can't eat in one sitting, I can munch on later if I get hungry, or I can heat it up and eat it tomorrow as a snack, or even if there's enough as a meal. I can pack it up in like one of these, you see these Pyrex glass dishes, and put it in the refrigerator and grab it and take it with me when I go to work, so that, you know, I've got something on hand there to eat if I get hungry. So if you guys are wondering, like, why did she put down 5 potatoes for 1 to 2 servings? That's a lot of potatoes. Well, I've been known to eat 5 potatoes in one meal. Kay says she does that with peppers, broccoli, and avocado. Oh, thank you for sharing. That's a really great tip, actually. You know, freezing. You were talking about making a hash with peppers, broccoli, and avocado. I actually have a little bit of avocado on here, and that, if I have avocado to put on top of this, it just makes it so much better. So I'm going to be doing that tonight as well. So I'm not sure if you meant you do that with freezing peppers, broccoli, and avocado, because I've never frozen avocado before, but I've heard of other people doing it, and I think that's actually such a great tip, because avocados can be, the price is always fluctuating, and sometimes they go on sale, and if you can buy a bunch of them, chop them up, and freeze them to make your guacamoles and toppings for things like this, that's great. Okay, so I'm just going to get a little mixing bowl, and like I said, I don't have a giant George Foreman grill. These aren't all going to fit in one go, so we're just going to do about half of these. Well, we'll do all of them. I'm just going to put them in here and stir them up with a handful of these bell peppers. I have a combination of orange and red in here. I know that we do the orange ones for this particular diet. All right, so I'm just going to chop up these mushrooms into I don't know, for this I don't slice them, I will kind of chop them up a little bit smaller, so I'll just take my knife and kind of go over that like so. That's good enough. Certainly doesn't have to be perfect. I'm the only one eating this. I have a little bit of broccoli here. And I'm going to kind of finely chop this as well into very small little bite-sized chunks and put that in. I should have grabbed a bigger mixing bowl. Sometimes I do that. And just kind of stir this about. And that's it. So the recipe calls for sumac and salt. I'm actually out of sumac. I need to get down. I am really, really fortunate. We have a spice pantry here in town. It's actually literally like maybe 2 blocks away from my house. So they've got everything there. And so I need to go get more sumac. Kay says, buy on sale and freezing. Yeah, with avocado. Okay, you smash them and add a little lime juice and freeze them in ice trays. Oh, awesome. You put them in ice cube trays and then you have little like avocado ice cubes. That's a great tip. And then you can add them to smoothies. Yeah, and that's a wonderful way to get your fat in, especially for those, and we're going to be talking more about that later, but that's a great tip for those of you who are having difficulty keeping your weight on or gaining weight because your gastric conditions are so severe that you rarely ever eat. So eating things like, you know, incorporating in a lot of avocados, which are typically safe for GERD, is a great tip. And so yeah, when they go on sale, stock up on those avocados and freeze them in your ice cube trays. I love that. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm just gonna load this up. And like I said, these potatoes were pre-cooked. So it's really just kind of reheating everything, cooking through those broccoli and peppers and mushrooms. And I don't know if you guys have a George Foreman, but you can kind of load it up. You can kind of mound it up like this. And then when you shut it, it kind of just squashes everything and flattens it all out. And I got actually quite a bit of that in there. So one of the things I love about the George Foreman grill is, are we losing our connection? One of the things I love about the George Foreman grill is that it will, if it starts to sense that it's burning, potato overlord, it will just turn down the temperature on its own, or it will even turn off if it's really burning. At least mine does, which is really cool. Okay, I'm just going to clean this up really quick because I tend to lean forward when I talk to you guys. So give me 1 second. tonight I'm drinking water kefir. And this happens to be mixed with a little bit of blueberry pomegranate juice. And at the end of this month, probably in the final week, in one of these final videos, I'll be doing a video on how I make water kefir, which is a probiotic beverage that is probably, in my estimation, it's the cheapest, easiest way to make a probiotic food. So it's cheaper than buying a store-bought probiotic. It's cheaper than doing, well, I don't know if it's cheaper than doing kombucha, but it's certainly easier than doing kombucha. It's faster than doing kombucha, and it's delicious. I think it tastes better than kombucha. And it's versatile like kombucha. You can do a lot of different things with it. So I'll be sharing how I do that. If you don't want to wait till the end of the month, you can certainly go on YouTube and find out how to make your own water kefir. For those of you with LPR, or if you know that you cannot tolerate acidic foods, particularly people with LPR, then you'd want to abstain from this for now and just stick with a probiotic tablet in order to get in your probiotics. Okay? So let's move on to tonight's topic, why plant-based for GERD. So I've got five mini topics I want to try to cover tonight. The first one is a low-fat diet and the LES, which is your lower esophageal sphincter. So if you have GERD, hopefully by now you understand that the reason you get reflux is because, I'll get to your question, Angela, is because your LES, or your lower esophageal sphincter, is not shutting. Okay, so it's the valve where your esophagus meets your stomach. That valve opens to allow food to go in, and then it shuts to keep the contents in the stomach. And so when you're having reflux, where then the contents of the stomach are rising up into the esophagus, it's because that valve is not shutting. It's not squeezing. It's a little muscle, and it relaxes to let the food in, and it's a one-way valve. It's supposed to squeeze shut so that nothing can come back up. Okay? So the question then becomes, well, why is my valve not squeezing tight like it's supposed to? And one of the theories is in the presence of a food that is high in dietary fat, certain fats in particular more so than others, like the kinds that come from meat, dairy, and eggs, oils, highly processed oils, which would be any oils like your olive oil, your avocado oil, your canola oil, your vegetable oil. This is just pure oil that's been stripped from an otherwise regular food. It's just the pure fat from that. So these fats in your diet can cause that LES then to become relaxed, for lack of a better word. And so instead of it being tight and clamping down tight to keep the contents of the stomach in the stomach, it becomes weak or relaxed. And so it'll still kind of squeeze, but not enough. And so then the contents are able to reflux upward into the esophagus and cause symptoms of GERD and LPR. Okay, so a plant-based diet by default is a low-fat diet. I mean, yeah, there is fat in all plant foods, but it's very minimal in most plant foods. There are some exceptions. Avocado is one exception. Coconut, olives, nuts have a higher ratio of fat, whereas, you know, an apple has extremely small amount of fat in it. But when you're on a plant-based diet and all of the foods that you're eating are plant foods, and you're eating a variety of these plant foods, then generally speaking, you're going to be eating a low-fat diet. It's not a no-fat diet, and there's no reason to be afraid of fat. And in fact, to eat an avocado and get in that good healthy fat is not only beneficial, but it's essential. And so then the question then you might be thinking, well, what about, then why are we eating avocados? Why are we eating olives if these foods are fat and the LES is weak in the presence of fat? Well, there really isn't, nobody really knows why or if this is even for certain, but the hypothesis is that the fat in plant foods, you have to understand too that when you're eating a plant, it's comprised of many different components, macronutrients, micronutrients. You've got your fat, but you've also got your carbohydrate and your protein and your vitamins and your minerals all in a food, okay? And your body recognizes these plant foods, and it's equipped and it knows what to do with these plant foods, generally speaking, you know, in a healthy individual. with adequate stomach acid and gut microbiome, which we're going to talk more about. In the plant foods, it's different. Like when you compare this to avocado oil, for example. Okay, avocado oil can be injurious internally to the endothelial lining, for example, of your arteries. We know this. This has been proven. Are there benefits to avocado oil? Well, yeah, they can find benefits from it as well, but it's also injurious. It injures the lining of the arterial walls. So when we're talking about addressing GERD with diet, a plant-based diet then becomes logically a great place to start and a great diet to try. And does that mean it's going to work for everybody? No, I'll tell you right now. In fact, it didn't even work for me when I first tried it. I went on a plant-based diet because of the symptoms I was experiencing due to my GERD. Okay, I had a variety of symptoms. I went on the plant-based diet and I got improvement, but it did not fix the situation. Okay, so for me, that was because I had a hiatal hernia and that needed to be addressed as well. For other people, there might be other underlying conditions, digestive conditions, conditions that make it really difficult for your body to even handle fiber, right? So this is a high fiber diet. A plant-based diet is a high fiber diet, which is known to be very nutritious and beneficial and ideal for the human health. But if you don't have the tools necessary to break down fiber because of an underlying condition that needs to be addressed, then this diet might make you really sick. It might make you miserable. Just gonna check on this. Ooh, that smells good. Okay, so, I was saying before that this recipe calls for salt and sumac. I didn't put either of those in there because I'm out of sumac and I'm just gonna sprinkle salt on top and then put on the avocado raw. Okay, so that's number one, is a plant-based diet is a low-fat diet. So that just eating that low-fat diet is gonna begin to help that LES, that lower esophageal sphincter, to begin then to heal in a sense, because it's been injured through, potentially, possibly. I mean, I don't know you, I don't know your diet, but if you, let's say you've been eating the typical standard American diet that is rich in meat, dairy, and eggs, rich in junk foods, rich in oils, and all of those fats in your diet have been just kind of irritating and injuring that LES to the point where it just starts getting inflamed, injured and inflamed. Remember, inflammation is response to injury. Inflammation is the body's response, the healing mechanism to injury. So now if you have an LES that's now kind of swollen all the time and it can't shut down because it's injured and it's swollen. Okay, so we remove all that fat from the diet. We don't remove fat from the diet, but from the meat, dairy, and eggs and the junk food sources, and we just instead eat whole plant foods. Primarily whole plant foods. I mean, if you can just do, even 75% whole plant foods, that's going to be a step in the right direction. And it may get you the results you're looking for. I don't know. Okay, so let's move on to number two, why plant-based for reflux. So number two is weight loss. And for some of you, this isn't an issue. In fact, for some of you, you're trying to gain weight. Like I said before, you've got a lot of digestive distress. You fear eating in general because you feel sick every time you eat. I understand this. I understand those of you that are out there are miserable and you are suffering, and there are very few foods that you can tolerate, and you're wasting away. And so for that person who wants to try a plant-based diet such as this, you do have to be more strategic. You do have to be more careful. You do have to be more creative. You do have to be more prepared. You do have to be more educated. Because by default, again, a plant-based diet is lower in calories. And so now not only are you expected to eat a larger volume of food, right, so that you meet your caloric needs. If you're already wasting away and you're losing weight, then you may need to eat even a larger volume of food than maybe I am expected to. And so again, incorporating in, avocado, maybe with every meal. Maybe you're eating a fruit and avocado and walnut and greens smoothie multiple times a day. Maybe you're making a small smoothie, 5 to 6 times a day. And you might be saying, well, I can't do that. I've got a life to live. Maybe you can't do that. maybe you can't do that. But I'm just saying that for someone who is already lost a bunch of weight and they want to try a plant-based diet, you are going to have to put a little bit more into this in order to meet your caloric needs. It certainly can be done. It certainly can be done. You're going to want to eat, filling foods such as legumes, beans, whole grains, any of the whole grains that you can tolerate, things like quinoa, rice, oats. If you can't tolerate whole grains, again, that's going to add another layer of difficulty to this. So, but for generally speaking, for people who have the weight to lose, and more specifically to people who need to lose weight and are experiencing reflux, a plant-based diet is one of the best ways to lose weight. And as you begin to then lose weight, and the amount of fat around your omentum, your abdomen, your abdominal organs begins to then shrink, that's going to set you up for success in terms of healing your reflux. Okay? So weight loss. Number 3, reducing chemicals, and how that correlates or is correlates to, again, the lower esophageal sphincter. So on a whole foods plant-based diet, hopefully you're doing some organic, if not all organic. That's done. Is going to drastically reduce the number of chemicals and pesticides and poisons and toxins that you're putting into your body, right? So this is another hypothesis on why the LES becomes weak. Again, that valve is supposed to squeeze tight. It's a muscle it's supposed to squeeze and shut down. It's the gatekeeper of your stomach. It's supposed to protect the esophagus. It's supposed to not allow that acid to rise up. And then if it is unable to do that because it can't clamp down, one of the main reasons is because it's become injured. Okay, and if you're eating a diet that's high in dietary fat from meat, dairy, eggs, and oil, and you're also eating a lot of junk foods, sodas, cookies, cakes, candy bars, donuts, highly processed foods, things like, I don't know, like Lipton cup of soup, these foods that come, like Denison's chili, things that come in a can and they're filled with chemicals. Any food that, is you buy in the middle of the supermarket, that just sits on a shelf, food that just sits on a shelf and it's still safe to eat, that food is filled with preservatives and chemicals. When you're eating those foods on a regular basis long term, it can begin to injure your LES and cause inflammation there, which means it's going to be compromised in its ability to squeeze. All right? So a whole foods plant-based diet not only does it eliminate meat, dairy, and eggs, but it eliminates junk food. Okay? So we're sticking to, plant foods as close to their whole form as possible. I mean, we can cook them. In fact, there is benefit to cooking food. There's benefit to raw food, particularly if you have digestive conditions. Cooked food is better because it's easier for your digestive system to digest it. So cooked food in that case is good. In fact, for a person to be able to eat a completely raw plant-based diet, which in my opinion is probably the healthiest way anyone can eat, but for many of us, we're just not equipped to be able to do so because that's a lot of hard, raw fiber. And so you've got to have a really healthy microbiome intact and able to deal with all of that raw food. Candy says this weekend is going to be tough. Kids want to go out for brunch. Well, brunch, if it's a all-you-can-eat bar where you're going up and self-serving yourself, a lot of times there's some good options there for you, Candy. It just depends on the restaurant, but I usually have pretty good luck going to brunch. Not always. Sometimes there may be just one thing. I might have a plate of cantaloupe and that's all I eat. But usually, I mean, my husband and I, when we go to restaurants, we try to go to restaurants that can accommodate my diet. So, I mean, that's what we do. But one thing you can do, Candy, if you're not sure what they serve and they may not have anything for you, is to eat a huge meal before you go. And then just snack on some fruit while you're there. Snack on some, you know, the one thing that they may have. They may have potatoes, but they may be cooked in a lot of oil, which may irritate, you know, your reflux. So yeah, it's tricky. I get it. I've been there. But planning ahead is probably your best strategy. Eating and being full when you go into the restaurant, which I know it's not as fun. Remember, this month is about being disciplined, and it's about for 1 month in order to gain some traction in terms of healing. All right, so let's move on to number 4, which is healing of the digestive tract, which is what I just said. So when we can get some traction in healing the digestive tract through plant-based eating, one of the things that happens as a result of that is eliminating bloating. Okay, if any of you suffer with bloating, another thing that can happen is eliminating constipation. Okay, and another thing that can happen on a whole foods plant-based diet is eliminating inflammation. Okay, and this, you know, and the healthier your diet is, you know, the more you can abstain from the meat, the dairy, the eggs, the oils, the highly processed foods, the junk food, and stick to, you know, really healthy, nutritious plant foods during this 20-day challenge, the more likely you're going to have traction in that healing, which means the more likely you're going to start having reducing the bloating, reducing the constipation, and the inflammation, which means what? Which means the system is healing. And if you can reduce or eliminate those 3 things, that's going to support your LES's ability. It's going to be healing as well, because the foods that are going in are no longer irritating it. So it's going to be healing as well, and it's going to begin to be able to gain its strength. But now, instead of having all that bloating, which puts pressure on your LES, so you have a weak, injured, and inflamed LES that's compromised already. And now on top of that, you have pressure pushing up on that valve. You've got someone knocking on the door of that valve saying, let me out, let me out, let me out, right? You have pressure built up from that bloating. It's going to open. Okay, so you've got to address bloating. You've got to address inflammation for the same reason. And constipation, if we're constipated and we bear down in order to pass a bowel movement, that also puts upward pressure. It pushes all the contents upward and can put pressure on that LES. So as long as we have inflammation, injury, and pressure on that LES, it's going to have a really hard time squeezing, clamping down, and doing its job. And a plant-based diet, in many to most cases, is going to address those 3 things. Okay, again, not always. Not always if there are other underlying conditions. Excuse me. Just for a moment. I'm going to plate this up. It's starting to cool. Hot. Hot tamales. Oh, those peppers, they're like roasted. Yum. This is what we've got. See that? And I'm going to put, where's my knife? I'm just going to do, I gotta be honest, I am not that hungry. Probably once I start eating this, I'll change my mind, but I'm not super hungry right now. I'm just gonna do about half of this avocado. This is a really good avocado. And I'm gonna put a little bit of sea salt on here. This is This is not sea salt, this is Himalayan salt. And that's it. One of these days the food's gonna slide right out onto the floor. You guys see that? Okay, so I'm gonna let that cool for a second before I take a bite. It's steaming hot. All right, so we've got one more point. One more point. Okay, so the last one, healing of the digestive tract. And then number 5 is diversification of healthy gut flora, healthy gut bacteria. Through increased prebiotic consumption, which is what? Prebiotic fiber. So plant foods are high in fiber, and the healthy bacteria of your gut microbiome love fiber. And we now know that they are an integral part of digestion. It's not just about stomach acid and enzymes, digestive enzymes. It's about bacteria. And it's a burgeoning, blossoming field. Let's stick this in the freezer. It's very fascinating, and we're learning more and more. But one of the things we do know, one of the things that researchers agree upon is that the more diversified your gut flora is, meaning many different species and strains of bacteria in your gut, the healthier people are. So they look at very healthy people, they look at lean people, they look at people who take no medications and have no disease, and they see this beautiful rainbow, they see a myriad, they see diversity of thousands of different strains of bacteria within their gut microbiome, okay? And then they look at unhealthy people and they look at their gut flora, and it's not diversified. There's fewer strains of bacteria. They're missing strains of bacteria. And I know they're doing, a lot of studying on, fecal plant transplants, which I find fascinating. I actually spoke with a customer, a client of mine recently, who told me she's had 4 fecal transplants. I don't know if she's a part of a study or what's going on, but she basically told me that they didn't help her at all. And in fact, she's sicker now than forever. And this woman has a lot of digestive distress. I mean, she's got a lot going on. And she's kind of a mystery, and she's seeing all the best doctors, and so far no one has been able to help her. So it's really sad. But yeah, the gut microbiome, it comes down to, how, in order to really get a particular or specific job done, you have to have particular or specific or the right tools, right? If you want to get the job done, you've got to have the right tools. And when it comes to your digestion, you have to have adequate stomach acid, you have to have enzymatic activity, and you have to have a diversified number and selection of species of bacteria. Okay, and so unfortunately, many of us, most of us, have been, we've taken antibiotics, and it wipes out the bacteria. Or if you grew up, my poor children grew up with a germaphobe mother who constantly was cleaning them and wiping them and, washing their hands and making them and turning them into germaphobes, afraid of germs. We need exposure to germs in order to build up that immunity, in order to build up the colonizations of all these different species that really kind of, for lack of a better description, kind of keep each other in check. Right? So we have, we have the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, pathogenic bacteria. And really, if you just have a diversified flora, then the good bacteria kind of keep the bad bacteria in check. But when those pathogens, like the fungus and the candida and the parasites and all that kind of stuff, the pathogenic stuff, the bad stuff, starts to over-colonize and kind of take over, okay, then we start to see a lot of these digestive conditions. And we see injury to the digestive tract. We see a lot of inflammation. We have bleeding. We have blockages. We have strangulations. And we have a lot of pain and discomfort. A lot of trips to the ER. Okay, so then again, for those of us with reflux, then we need to make sure we need to find ways to stimulate stomach acid, and we need to make sure we have appropriate and adequate enzymes, and we need to make sure we have a diversified gut flora. And one of the best ways to do that is to eat plant food. This is the prebiotic that feeds those bacteria but we also need to reintroduce more colonies of bacteria. And so that can be done with a probiotic beverage like water, kefir, or fermented foods, or you can take a probiotic capsule, okay, to begin to reintroduce more species of bacteria into the gut. But then we need to cultivate and nurture those species, and the best way to do that is through eating plant foods. So for the person with LPR, for example, fermented foods may not be a possibility at this time because they are acidic. They are acidic, and so we know when acidic foods go down, they go down the esophagus, they can irritate and agitate already injured and inflamed tissues and cause more problems. So that's why it's so important. That's why we do, you know, this diet that's not only plant-based, but it eliminates all common trigger foods, which typically speaking are your more acidic foods. That's why we don't do a lot of vinegar or any vinegar. That's why we don't do coffee. That's why we don't do soda. We don't do chocolate. And we don't do meat, dairy, and eggs. Again, these are all pretty acidic foods. Okay, so let's take a bite. Oh, I should have put the other one. I'll do it when we're all done here. Mmm. Oh, it's perfect. Perfect, perfect. I like to get a little bit of everything on the bite. Those mushrooms, oh man, they're delicious. Mmm. I gotta love those Yukon Gold potatoes. They're so creamy. Mmm. These turned out, I love the George Foreman. Look how perfectly browned those potatoes are. Mmm. All right, I'm gonna take one more bite. I'm not gonna have any problem eating this all of a sudden. It's really good. Mmm. Excuse me. All right, so let's see. All right, so, okay. So for those of you doing the challenge, put in the comments of this video, I'd like you to share, just because this is a support group and we're supposed to be supporting and inspiring and encouraging one another. So maybe we could get a conversation going. What are you hoping this diet will do for your health? So maybe you joined this challenge because you're just interested in learning and observing. Maybe you have a specific diagnosis. Maybe you have reflux. Maybe you just have heartburn and that's it. Maybe you have a long list of health issues and you're hoping that they will all at least improve to some extent, if not be cured. I mean, we hear examples of this all the time, of people curing everything from acne to cancer. I mean, minor stuff to major stuff with plant-based nutrition. Excuse me. So what do you hope this diet will do for you? Go ahead and put your comments in the comment section below. I would be curious to find out what you have to say, and maybe others will be inspired by what you have to say as well. So thank you so much for joining. I hope you guys all have a lovely evening. I hope this has been valuable to you, and I hope you'll come back on Thursday. I don't know what I'm going to be cooking on Thursday. I have a list around here somewhere, but I can't remember what it is. But I'll be back here in the kitchen on Thursday. Thanks for watching.